Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Boldly Going, where we discuss all things Star Trek. We're going through most of the series, and I am Merlin, sometimes known as Joe in the mortal realm, and I've got my film fanatics friends with me today. I've got Dan over here.
Hello.
And I got Justin over there.
How's it going?
Today, we're going back to TOS, and this time we're going to talk about Mudd's women. And to quote Simpsons character, worst episode ever.
Aww.
But I will listen to what Dan has to say about it because he likes women.
Great. Not only do I like women, but the actor that plays Mudd. He is a veritable character actor from the 60s and 70s.
Uh-huh.
He was on the Dick Van Dyke Show. He had his own sitcom a year after this episode, so I was very excited to see him. I've heard of the Mudd character.
Wonderful.
But when he started, I was like, okay, I like this guy. So I was in from the beginning.
Oh, great. Glad.
And I do like the women part of this episode. I'm surprised that you hate it as much as you do. I did not think it was horrible. I thought it was interesting.
Uh-huh.
And basically what happens, I guess we didn't do the synopsis part.
Go ahead.
But essentially, Mudd and his three women board the Enterprise. They get picked up, and then they find out they're running out of lithium crystals, which I thought it was it dilithium crystals?
Dilithium
Star
crystals?
Trek?
This is before.
This is pre-dilithium.
Well,
okay.
sometimes it varies from writer to writer. So eventually you pick up things and they stick with them.
Okay.
So the dye has not been strapped officially yet.
Because I kept saying lithium crystals, and I was like, that's something that doesn't sound right.
Dilithium. Very good, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So eventually they have to stop on another planet to, get with the lithium crystals.
Basic Star Trek stuff.
Basic Star Trek, and they have a big argument, and Mudd, they basically Kirk and Mudd don't get along.
It's true.
The women obviously are
Hosts.
That's basically what they are.
That is basically what they are. And, certain other people see better for them than that. And so struggle ensues with that. So I don't know. I thought it was, it is standard. You're right. But at this point in time, we're only 6 or 7 episodes in. So I don't think quite the standard has been really set yet.
It's true.
Of what is a standard Trek episode and what is not.
So nice, Dan.
Look, I didn't dislike this episode.
It's okay.
I'm dying to hear why you hated it so much. Obviously, it has some of the classic tropes of Star Trek of, let's female empowerment. Let's try to make that a thing, and Kirk being gung ho about his projects, and they land on a different planet, and there's obviously some tropes, but I don't know. I thought it was all handled fine. It wasn't boring. Spock doesn't get a lot to do in this episode, which does definitely bring it down a little bit.
It's unusual, too.
It is, even for early on. He's obviously one of the main people. But I sort of reasoned it this way. I sort of thought, well, since we are so early on, maybe they wanted to just give some of the other people a chance to shine. We see some people in this episode that we haven't really seen much of yet. So, I thought it was okay for that. I don't know. I kind of liked it. It's a B-.
All right. Justin, what are your thoughts on Mudd's women?
Well, I thought this was a classic case of sexism that's not trying to be sexist and still is kind of sexist.
That's how I look at it.
This is an episode that, it's sort of like Charlie X. It's trying to speak to a certain aspect of cultural reflection and just kind of misses the mark. It's very sexist at times. It's pretty much... Up to this point, I don't think we've seen a more sexist Star Trek episode than this one.
It's pretty sexist.
It's incredibly sexist. I remember when we watched the pilot episode of TOS, you mentioned that, okay, this is kind of a thing for TOS, but this is the first one that, it's really this out front and center, and that really left a bad taste in my mouth, particularly as we go deeper into it, when they try to make it not that, when they try to make a counterpoint to that, okay, we should strive for more than this. That's great. Did you have to go that direction with literally less than 5 minutes into the episode? we could have made... If we're going to be a message episode, let's try and get that in earlier rather than later. Mudd, I thought, was just a horrible, horrible human being or alien or whatever the heck he is. I've been joking with Joe since we started recording tonight. He's basically Irish pimp.
Well, he is. He's definitely a pimp.
And as the episode goes along, it just gets more and more uncomfortable with him, particularly with the whole sexist undertones. The only reason I don't entirely want to fail this episode is because I do appreciate that counterpoint that these female characters should be striving for more than just being these objectifications, and looks are truly not everything, which I respect. I just wish they had gotten more of it in there. This one's a D for me.
Okay. Well, I was exaggerating a little bit when I said it was the worst episode ever. It's not my least favorite TOS episode or anything, but it's just one that I've never particularly liked, and I admit that's more for personal reasons. I think that it's funny, for all the great things that Star Trek has done, and especially for TOS, they tackle a lot of heavy issues, and I think for the most part, even though it's a little bit heavy-handed, it's usually handled pretty well. You know, they get the good message across. Sexism is one of the big weaknesses of Star Trek because Roddenberry was sexist. He didn't try to be, but he was. I mean, it just happens, and this is one of those examples of, you know, they were trying to speak for women's rights, but it's one of those things where with the original series, it's best left kind of implied by the fact that these characters are holding positions in this futuristic society, rather than when they try to portray it a certain way. Specifically with female characters, it often backfires, and I think that this is one of the examples of that. But in addition to that, I just don't like the Mud character. I don't find this episode funny, and I don't find the comedy that enthralling, and I don't like the actor that much either. Sorry, Dan.
Sorry.
And also, this is... Oh, I think one reason why I dislike this episode so much, in addition to all that, is that of all the episodes of TOS to get a direct sequel, this was the one that does.
Oh, no.
And I mean, when you see the many episodes that follow, that they could
Mud's
have followed
Revenge.
up on, Mud, actually.
Oh, no.
You know, which is more Mud centric. So, you know, I just feel like it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I think this episode's okay. A lot of people do like it, but I just don't.
Yeah,
think
I didn't mind it.
I didn't think it was that great. Personally, I've never really liked this one that much, and I leave it with a C-.
Well, you know, to speak to that, though, about the sexism, I guess, I mean, you guys have to keep in mind of when it was out. I mean, it was in the 60s. There weren't any shows talking about this kind of a thing, really. You know, maybe it wasn't handled in the best way. I didn't know Roddenberry was a sexist himself. Okay.
It's kind of sexist.
But, you know, on one hand you got Gilligan's Island with, you know, Ginger and Marianne, you know, being
Touche.
nothing but eye candy. The other hand, you got Laugh-In with Goldie Hawn and Lily Tomlin, you know, wearing their bikinis and, oh, let's spray paint our bodies. I mean, really, you know, sexist stuff. I Dream of Jeannie and, you know.
It's true.
So in that context, I feel like, now look, if this episode was, you know, the latest episode of whatever, you know, The Good Wife or something, you know, or CSI, you know, okay, obviously it's quite sexist and ill-fitting for the time. But for 50 years ago, I don't know. I don't think it does as bad a job for the time period as you guys are saying.
Well, I'll tell you what. There are maybe a few episodes that handle it a little bit better. You'll have to watch more of it before you can make that decision yourself.
Sure.
Definitely.
And while I appreciate your position, Dan, as I said before, when you look at all the things that Star Trek was tackling that nobody else was, like racism,
True.
and handling it with much more dignity
Than this.
than sexism, which is, you know, shakily handled at best. I don't know if that's the strongest argument.
All right. Well, fair enough.
But, you know, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I don't think it's a terrible episode. I just don't think it deserves the following because, you know, it gets a direct... I stand corrected, actually. I'm sorry. It gets a direct sequel in the original series. It also gets a spin-off in the animated series. Oh. Mud comes back twice.
Wow.
Of all the characters, of all the storylines. You see what I'm saying? I just don't think...
All right, well, that might be a little much, yeah.
Yeah, I think that you could say even compared to some of the episodes you've seen before, I mean, does this one seem worthy of much more expansion? Really?
No, I mean, there's definitely others. I didn't really know about the whole... The legacy that Mud left, but
well, that's part of where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I guess is the fact
I can appreciate
that
then if you don't like the character.
So it's in the back of my mind. Like I personally don't like it, and it's like, why did they? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's because he was a bigger actor at the time. They wanted to use him. I don't know.
Yeah, he was in a bunch of stuff.
But you know, it's just frustrating. And I guess when I say Roddenberry was sexist, I don't mean that he was like, you know, women suck. I mean, obviously that wasn't the case. He was more a product of his time. It was one thing he couldn't really get past.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
You know, so yeah, it's just evidence. It's the way it is. I mean, the skirts are so short. I mean, come on. Do you think that was intentional? It was.
Well, of course it was. I mean, like I said, that was the time.
Yeah, and
They had just started being able to get away with things like that, so why not make them as short as they possibly can get away with?
so the ideal future, all the officers have tiny miniskirts.
In their mind, yes.
That's right.
Although,
I get the reference.
look at what?
It's a Fullmetal Alchemist reference.
Oh, okay.
That's when the general runs the country, that's what he'll do.
Oh, okay.
They will wear tiny miniskirts, and that's Star Trek. Which is funny because, I'll tell you guys that later.
All right, but look at all the booty shorts that girls wear today.
Okay.
They're pretty short.
Look, no, I'm personally fine with it. I think that in terms of modesty, you could do a lot worse. I mean, I'm fine with it. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, is it a little sexist, but was Roddenberry obviously as sexist as most execs behind other shows? Of course,
sure
he's probably one of the nicer ones.
Yeah.
But the nicest racist in 1920 is still a racist by today's standards.
It's true, and I mean I'm sorry, and I mean this episode is certainly not the most sexist thing of this time period.
No, you're right. I Dream of Jeannie is much more sexist.
Yes.
Oh, by a landslide.
The sexism is a mixed thing for me. I kind of take it or leave it. I personally just don't like Mudd.
That's fair.
My hatred for Mudd is real. I don't like him. And once again, did he need 2 more episodes? I don't think so. And that's just my opinion. So
Right.
that's just my personal rage.
Sounds good.
Rage. But that's going to be wrapping up this one. Did you guys see Mudd? If so, what'd you think of it? Did you see the other episodes? Let us know, spoiler free, in the comments below. And check out the other episodes we'll be doing. We're going back to Next Gen. Hopefully that'll be good. And I'm going to say goodbye, and you guys can say goodbye too.
Yep, see ya.
Disengage.